Today I'm going to talk about the fear of rejection. It is important because it blocks many activities that result in reduced success with women and success in society. In episode 1, I said that fear and greed are the basic motives of our psyche. The fear of rejection is precisely the result of this mechanism and is responsible for most, if not all, women's problems. The human brain, or more precisely the limbic system, is functionally responsible for survival and reproduction. His job is to keep our bodies alive. At the physiological level, this is done by managing vital functions such as body temperature, breathing, digestion, and so on. And at the external level, by recognizing and responding to situations that occur in the world around us. To simplify this scheme, from a cognitive point of view, when dealing with a situation or person you encounter, the part of the brain responsible for survival and reproduction must answer 3 basic questions. First, is that a threat to me? If so, should I fight it or run away? And it will properly prepare the body for fighting or flight. It will release a lot of adrenaline. It will sharpen the senses. The blood will be cut off from the unnecessary internal organs in this situation, and there may also be uncontrolled urination or feces. If the primal part of brain recognizes that the situation is highly life-threatening, it will thus reduce the unnecessary mass, which at the time of the escape, who knows, may decide on survival. From a pragmatic point of view, this is a very rational response. From physics, we know that using the same force makes it easier to disperse a smaller mass. It is precisely for this reason that rally cars are weighted to the maximum so that they can be faster. I understood this mechanism when I watched the wildlife show on the savannah. The gazelle running away from the predator defecated in the run. If she's caught, it's going to be dinner. Her body, in order to survive, grabbed every available possibility. Throwing out unnecessary ballast was one of them. And if the situation is safe, then the second question that the brain has to answer is, do I have to copulate with it? Are we so biologically constructed? For example, when you enter a party, you welcome new people, you know virtually immediately which girl at the party is attractive, which one you like and which one doesn't. It's because of this primary brain function. Sometimes you need to look a little longer to see if she's really attractive or just seems. But it's in this context. That's how our brains work. It's a subconscious mechanism. You can check it out and test it for yourself. Suppose you liked a girl in any situation. You stood in the queue for the cash, and right next to you, you noticed an attractive girl. You scan it from top to bottom. Besides, she noticed you and gently smiled. Have you ever had a similar situation? Probably. So now remember what you felt at the time. What emotions? You've probably gotten warmer and you felt something around your chest. That's how your fucking brain tells you that a woman is worth paying attention. She was the trigger. Biology did the rest. Now let's stop this movie for a second. If the circumstances of such a meeting were appropriate, that is, the woman was not with her boyfriend or husband, she did not have a ring on her finger, then you could talk to her or do nothing. And here we come to the crucial moment. Most polite, nice, and insecure guys will not do anything, which is most gently replied to each other's smile. Even if they want to meet such a girl, they are subconsciously afraid of rejection that might encounter them. If, moreover, their previous experiences were just such that they once gathered courage. But the girl told them gently to turn away, then they would be afraid to approach and start the interaction. They'll start to feel stressed. Your heart starts beating hard, and stress can turn into fear. The brain is responsible for this, which will associate the resemblance of the situation with previous events and interpret it as a threat, because the lack of interest on the part of the woman in our reproductive function means the end of the game, because we will not be able to pass on our genes. Reproductive disaster. And I would remind you that his main concern is survival and reproduction, so this reaction is quite logical. The problem is that it is evolutionarily unjustified nowadays. Objectively, there is no reason to be afraid, but despite this, the body will often absorb this fear. Let's see why exactly this fear arises. In evolution, fear has a very important function. Since it's an emotion, you know that it is information. In this case, it is meant to protect against danger. The definition of fear is a disturbance of mood as a result of risk or a real or imagined danger. In the hypothetical situation described above, there is no physical danger, so it must be something else. In fact, it is. In this particular case, the risk that the brain registers has 2 pillars. The first is evolutionary. If a woman rejects your approach, it means death at the most primitive evolutionary level. By not passing on your genes, notice the species. In this case, the evolution of our psyche has been somewhere at the tribal level, thousands of years ago. The pace of society's development has been far ahead of the adaptation of our human evolutionary mechanisms. It is clear that for the conception of children from a natural point of view, a male and a female, a sperm and an egg cell are needed, which in the act of coupling have a chance to merge. If a man is unable to find a woman for reproductive purposes, it is this prospect that generates fear. In addition, note that in the past, one of the greatest penalties was expulsion from a group, clan, or tribe, so-called banishment or exile. In the distant past, exile outside your group very often meant postponed death. Imagine you go back in time a few thousand years and your tribe throws you out of it. You're becoming a Benite. You'll be alone. You have the weather against you. In winter, you must survive negative temperatures. You must secure access to food. And you must protect yourself from diseases or wild animals. For example, if you break your leg, you won't be able to hunt. Death as a result of starvation will occur within 30 days at the latest. If you don't have water supplies at your disposal, you'll die within a few days. It is assumed that a man can survive without water for 3 days. That is why exile or banishment was such a terrible punishment, because it meant death. Being in a group, if you broke a leg, the rest would share food with you and surround you with care so you could survive. When you're alone, you probably don't have a chance. Such a logical sequence of events is seen by your brain, which is why you may feel a fear of attitude toward women. If you were lucky and won a biological or social lottery, that means you got a set of genes that result in high height and physical strength. Women will automatically react to you better, and you may not experience rejection at all. But this is a more rare situation, and rather an exception to the rule. Exception number 2 is a situation where you have in your nose the social conventions and opinions of others about yourself. Then by definition, you don't care about that shit. Strangely enough, this is exactly how narcissists and sociopaths work. They are self-centered and convinced of their uniqueness. They treat other people not as subjects, but as objects. In their minds, the very fact that they have paid attention to the other person is already a sufficient reward for such a person. They thus impose a frame, a picture of reality, because they genuinely believe in it. And the dominant frame wins, so other people start believing in the picture of reality that they're creating. Most men, however, have to develop other strategies of action or adapt those that actually work. Basically, the same effect of anxiety is achieved through social ostracism, that is, social exclusion. If a person is avoided by other people, not invited to parties, and so on, for the primary part of the brain, this is equivalent to the danger of survival. Nowadays, this is not entirely a true conclusion, but the mind will interpret it in this way. When you were a young person, let's say a 20-year-old, did you ever have a situation where your friends organized a party that they didn't invite you to and you found out about it? If so, remember how you felt then and what emotions you experienced, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Over time, and as you gain life experience, you will be less and less emotionally responsive to ostracism, because you will learn the rules of the game, but by then you are very susceptible to such techniques. The second pillar of fear of rejection is related to your beliefs, cognitive dissonance, and self-confidence. You need to know what self-confidence is, because this concept is in the top 3 of the most important things in a male-female context. Self-confidence, from a psychological point of view, is certain about the opinions you have about yourself and is inextricably linked to beliefs. Most people have very low self-esteem, which they obviously try to mask, for example, by aggression. Technically speaking, self-confidence is the framework, the beliefs you have about yourself. Increasing self-confidence is, at a mental level, de facto working on your beliefs, eradicating those that block you, and strengthening or installing those that make you stronger. Because a positive belief will change your physiology by generating positive emotions, and emotions affect behavior. Negative beliefs will generate negative emotional states, and being in a hole, instead of stopping to dig, you will descend lower and lower. And that's the easy way to apathy, depression, and many other problems. Don't forget that you can deceive your operating system by generating emotions by manipulating your body. Breath, straight posture, way of moving, and so on. I will discuss confidence in more detail in subsequent episodes. The fear of rejection is due to the fact that during interaction you may receive feedback that will conflict with your beliefs about yourself. Every human ego considers itself unique, so whatever it points to other conclusions will be rejected by the mind. That's why people offend the truth, because it can lead to uncomfortable conclusions. So it's good to curb your ego. You're going to go to a higher level. What does a woman's rejection mean for a man's ego? It is that it is not so special, because by definition, exceptional would not be rejected. This gives rise to frustration and obviously causes cognitive dissonance, which must be associated with discomfort. So such a rejected person will have to either deny the event or accept it. I don't know. Most will tend to reject reality because their imaginary picture of reality or their beliefs is stronger than actual reality. A lack of reflection on the situation and contemplation of the facts leads to rejection of reality. Fear of rejection at this level and in this context involves the risk of losing an image of yourself. It threatens personality coherence, so the brain will defend itself against cognitive dissonance in the way it knows, that is, by rejection. On a psychological level, the danger is the same as if a starving bear chased a human being for consumption. The mind will struggle to keep the beliefs that are installed first. He won't want to lose them, just as you'd like to lose your arm as a result of an amputation, even if it was the only way to survive. Because the personality side of you is, in a sense, you too, and the brain's job is to protect it just like the body. Once you know why such a mechanism exists, it naturally raises the question of whether something can be done about it. The answer is, of course, yes. This can be prevented. The most effective method is to work on self-worth and increase self-esteem. To change our beliefs about talking to women requires, first of all, to realize that we have some belief in it at all. Modern society infuses men most often with the false belief that it is rude to cling to someone on the street because they can be taken as dangerous. And there's a little bit of truth in that, because after all, the other person doesn't know your intentions, and he's got a goddamn brain, so he can see you as a danger. That's why starting a date in a dark, lonely alley isn't the best idea. Also, context is important for women. In a safe place, that is, on a white day with other people, this anxiety will be reduced because there are people around who could help. And so the situation is unlikely to be perceived by the woman as dangerous. The special thing is that most women are not used to the fact that a man starts a conversation with them on a white day, so they may be surprised. But it's good, contrary to the appearance, because in this way you break the scheme and force you to focus on the situation, which in the end causes the attention to be focused on you, at least until the woman doesn't drop you into a category. Because when she does, she'll go back to the scheme she learned. You need to know that hypergamy causes different standards of behavior to apply to males perceived as alpha and others to beta males. The male alpha female will allow much more. These are the rules of the game. Let us look at the issue of fear in a logical and as unemotional way as possible. What is the greatest danger to a man when he sincerely compliments a fact that he has noticed? For example, you can see that a woman is clever, and she's probably doing some kind of sport because that's what you see, especially in the summer, when the amount of clothes is limited. And then you say, "You have a very good figure. What kind of sport do you play? What's the worst that can happen? Can he ignore you?" He might say yes, he's going to fitness. In a group of people, he probably won't respond brutally that you have to leave because it would be cultural to them. And even if she said that, you've got proof that she's probably not a person worth getting to know. You're not in any physical danger. The worst thing that can happen is that you feel offended. He'll tell you about his offended ego. If you take an unpleasant comment and believe it, take it for true, you will feel bad. But you don't have to accept it because it's just an opinion. You can reverse such a statement in such a way that it confirms your thesis. It requires knowledge and training, but it is possible. In this respect, our brains are, colloquially speaking, stupid. He'll do whatever he wants. It's about you giving orders to your brain, not other people. This requires knowledge and awareness of these mechanisms. Then you need training and consciously conditioning yourself in the other direction so that the desired beliefs become automated, so they become a habit. This is the most difficult thing because it requires work, effort, and time. Nothing will come by itself. You have to make a proper habit. Another simpler way to get rid of this blockage is the 3 seconds rule. But know that it's just a trick, not a complete solution to the problem. A lack of self-confidence will emerge if you are subjected to severe tests. The 3-second rule says that if you make a decision against your beliefs, you have 3 seconds to do it. Because after that time, your mind will begin to generate a rationalization of your fear, which is why you should not talk and risk rejection. If you don't have a lot of willpower, then after those few seconds, the emotions and rationalization will take over and you won't come. In a sense, our brain is just a tool that executes the command it receives. He will follow the scheme he has learned, which has become a habit over time. But if you know the rules of the game, you can use them to your advantage. Once you know about these mechanisms, you have a chance to control them. Otherwise, somebody else will have control. Women do not like to approach men because they do not tolerate rejection, because evolutionally it also means death. In addition, due to the large number of available candidates and their attention, women with high SMV seldom experience rejection, unless they're going to get to conscious guys who have a high value for themselves and therefore have a choice. To better understand, imagine how a woman feels, who so far has basically had to do little to get attention. It was enough to fix her hair and show little boobs, and the guys were already simping at her sight. She's used to the fact that she handles the cards and the guys do what she wants. But as time goes by, as her SMV drops, she gets less and less attention. And the worst thing from her point of view is that the guys she would like start to ignore her because they have a choice, and they usually choose more attractive. Something that she received free of charge from nature, without any effort, is slowly but systematically taken away from her. Put yourself in her place for a moment and imagine what cognitive dissonance she is experiencing. Shock and mistrust are little to say. That is why, because of the same mechanism, women tolerate divorce so badly when it is not for them to decide on it. Fear turns into actual rejection and becomes existential. For the same reason, women are so sensitive to yours girlfriends because they are a potential threat to her. By rejecting a man and leaving her alone, nature is not guided by empathy, or love, or even morality. It seems to me that in this respect, ladies have even worse than men, because if a man is constantly rejected, then at least there is no such feeling of loss because he did not know that feeling of acceptance. In the mind of saying what the eyes do not see, that heart does not hurt. The woman, on the other hand, had attention from the beginning. She didn't have to educate her and she doesn't understand why she loses her, but she feels she's losing. He's experiencing it. It's like you've been riding a Mercedes all your life and having to move to an old Honda. Is it easy to change a habit? I'm sure you'd have a sense of loss. Similar anxiety can occur when you're in a relationship, when you're considering leaving your partner who's badly treating you. You'll think you'll never find anyone again. That fear is untrue. There are too many women in the world for such a risk to materialize. It's also rationalization, producing a brain to give an excuse to yourself to stay in an unsatisfactory relationship. I once heard the saying that a known enemy is better than a new one because you already know the old one. You know what you can expect from him. You'd have to learn something new from the beginning, which costs time and energy. Plus, it could surprise you. For these reasons, and a lack of self-confidence, many men remain in harmful relationships. Of course, for men bound by a legal agreement and a statutory marital property union, the resolution of which means the loss of a large part of the property, the financial balance sheet of the divorce is also important. And the prospect is, gently speaking, uninteresting. In conclusion, fear, even though it can be strong or even paralyzing, is still only information. You give it meaning, do it consciously or unconsciously, someone will make sense to you. The anxiety that you feel is natural and is generated by your brain. Nowadays, however, it is not justified. It can be overcome either by increasing self-confidence and consequently by getting rid of anxiety, or by psychological tricks. I recommend the first method because it is better and more complete, but it requires work on yourself. There's a saying that the world belongs to the brave, and the women belong to the ruthless. Now I know why this is true because ruthlessness is a sign of domination, of fearlessness, of strength. Evolutionary women are looking for strong guests. I've tested this mechanism in practice, and I'm sorry, I get the same result every time. The better I treated a woman, the worse she treated me. The intensity was different because every human being is different, but this mechanism is unchanged. Somebody older might say that once it wasn't, that it was different, there were other times. In part, yes, consent, principles of upbringing, and moral principles were stronger. Today, in the customary sphere, there is a policy of irresponsibility for their actions.